My name is Cassandra, and at 34, I never imagined I'd be a widow raising 7-year-old Lily alone in our modest apartment. When Brian died suddenly of a heart attack, that $250,000 home became our only security. My father always controlled my life, but when I refused to transfer the deed to him, I never expected violence. The image of his hands around my daughter's throat still haunts me. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit subscribe if you've ever stood against family betrayal to protect what's yours. Brian and I met during sophomore year of college. He was the quiet art student who caught my attention in the campus coffee shop with his intricate sketches and gentle smile. I was studying elementary education, planning to become a teacher, but still living under my father's financial control. From the moment I introduced Brian to my parents, my father Richard made his disapproval clear. An artist? How exactly do you plan to provide a stable future? He'd questioned with thinly veiled contempt. Despite my father's objections, our relationship blossomed. Brian's kindness and creativity balanced my practical nature perfectly. We spent countless evenings planning our future together in his cramped dorm room, dreams of a simple life filled with love and creativity. By senior year, Brian had proposed with a small vintage ring that had belonged to his grandmother. I said yes without hesitation, knowing it would infuriate my father. The wedding was small, just close friends and Brian's supportive family. My parents attended, but my father's cold demeanor cast a shadow over the day. "You could have married someone with prospects, Cassandra," he whispered before walking me down the aisle. "It's not too late to change your mind." But I knew Brian was the right choice, even if he didn't fit my father's definition of success. We started our married life in a tiny one-bedroom rental, Brian working at a local design firm while I secured a part-time teaching position at an elementary school. We lived paycheck to paycheck, but found joy in simple pleasures, weekend hikes, home-cooked meals, and dreaming about our future. When I discovered I was pregnant with Lily just 2 years into our marriage, Brian's face lit up with pure joy. "This apartment is too small for a baby," my father commented during one of his rare visits. "You should let me buy you something more suitable." But we politely declined, wanting to make our own way. Brian took on freelance projects in addition to his day job, and I continued teaching until my 8th month. We transformed a corner of our bedroom into a nursery, painting whimsical forest creatures on the walls that Brian designed. Lily arrived on a rainy spring morning, perfect in every way with Brian's artistic temperament evident from her earliest days. My father seemed to soften slightly in her presence, occasionally bringing extravagant gifts we couldn't afford. "She deserves the best," he'd say, implying we couldn't provide it ourselves. For 5 years, we continued this delicate balance, accepting occasional help from my parents while maintaining our independence. Brian's career gradually advanced as his design portfolio grew, and when Lily turned 3, we made the decision to look for a home of our own. The market was competitive, but we found a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a good school district that we could just afford with our combined savings. $200,000 is highway robbery for something this size. My father scoffed when we showed him the place. "Let me buy you something better in a different neighborhood." Again, we declined. This was our dream, modest as it might appear to others. We secured a mortgage and moved in, Brian spending weekends painting and renovating while I searched yard sales for furniture with potential. The day we made our final mortgage payment, just months before Brian's death, we celebrated with sparkling cider and a homemade cake with Lily. "We own it, free and clear," Brian had said, raising his glass with pride. "No matter what happens, you and Lily will always have a home." How prophetic those words would prove to be. Brian's death was as sudden as it was devastating. A congenital heart condition no one knew about, a ticking time bomb that exploded one ordinary Tuesday while he was working late. The call from the hospital came just after I'd tucked Lily into bed with her favorite story. By the time we arrived, he was already gone. At 33, my husband had left us without warning, without goodbyes. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, paperwork, and trying to explain to a 7-year-old why Daddy wasn't coming home. Brian had a modest life insurance policy that barely covered the funeral expenses and outstanding medical bills. The apartment, now valued at around $250,000 according to a recent appraisal, became our only significant asset. My father initially seemed to step up, bringing groceries and helping with school pickup when I was too overwhelmed to function. "I'm here for you, Cassandra," he assured me. "Whatever you need." His support felt genuine, and in my grief, I welcomed it without question. If only I had recognized the calculating look in his eyes when he surveyed our home. 3 months after Brian's funeral, my father began his regular Sunday visits. He would arrive precisely at 10 in the morning, grocery bags in hand. "Just some essentials," he'd say, though the bags always contained exotic fruits Lily wouldn't eat and expensive cuts of meat that spoiled in our refrigerator. During these visits, his comments grew increasingly critical. "This kitchen is so outdated," he remarked one Sunday, running his finger along the countertop Brian had refinished himself. "And these cabinets are practically falling apart." They weren't, of course. Brian had meticulously restored the original wooden cabinets, preserving their vintage charm while ensuring their functionality. When he offered to watch Lily one afternoon so I could attend a teacher conference, I returned to find her in tears. "Grandpa said my room is too small for all my toys," she confided. "He said in his house, I could have a princess room 3 times bigger." His undermining became a pattern. Subtle comments about the neighborhood going downhill or the building having structural issues he could supposedly detect. 6 months after Brian's death, my father arrived with a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. "I've been thinking about your situation, Cassandra," he began after sending Lily to play in her room. "As your father, it's my job to protect you, especially now." He spread several documents across our kitchen table, pointing to various highlighted sections. "These are transfer papers," he explained, sliding a pen toward me. "The apartment should be in my name for asset protection. It makes financial sense." I stared at him, confusion giving way to suspicion. Asset protection? From what? Property taxes, maintenance costs, potential lawsuits. Owning real estate comes with liabilities, he explained with practiced patience. "If you transfer it to me, I can sell it and put the money aside to buy you something better when the right property comes along. Something in a neighborhood with better schools for Lily." The request was so unexpected that I didn't immediately refuse. "I need time to think about this," I told him, pushing the papers away. "Brian and I worked hard for this place. It's paid off and the mortgage is in both our names." His expression hardened slightly. "Don't be sentimental about an apartment, Cassandra. Brian would want what's best for Lily, not clinging to some outdated property because of memories." That comment stung. "I'll think about it," I repeated, ending the conversation by checking on Lily. The next day, the calls began. My father, then my mother, then even my Aunt Susan, all with reasons why transferring the apartment made perfect sense. My father's arguments grew increasingly technical, discussing tax implications and property regulations I knew little about. "You're a teacher, not a real estate expert," he reminded me daily. "Let those of us with business experience handle these matters." After a week of constant pressure, I called Maria, a former college roommate who now worked in real estate. Over coffee at a cafe away from my neighborhood, I explained the situation. "He wants you to do what?" Maria's eyebrows shot up. "Cassandra, that apartment is now worth at least $250,000 in today's market. It's in a desirable area with excellent schools. Property values there have increased 15% in just the last year. But he says there are tax issues, liability concerns." I began. Maria shook her head firmly. "Those are standard costs of homeownership, and they're minimal compared to the value of having a fully paid property. Something else is going on here." That evening, I searched online for information about my father's business, something I'd never paid much attention to before. A local business journal article mentioned Richard Gardner Enterprises facing financial restructuring amid investor concerns. Another piece referenced a lawsuit from former partners alleging misappropriation of funds. The pieces suddenly connected. My father didn't want to protect my asset. He wanted to liquidate it to solve his own financial problems. The realization sent ice through my veins. The security Brian had worked so hard to provide for us was being targeted by my own father. When he called the next morning, I answered with newfound clarity. "I've decided to keep the apartment in my name," I stated firmly. "It's what Brian would have wanted for Lily's future." His response was measured but cold. "I see you're still letting emotion cloud your judgment. We'll discuss this further at dinner on Friday." It wasn't a request but a command, his standard approach to family matters. Friday dinner at my parents' suburban home had been a monthly tradition since Brian's death. My mother claimed it helped Lily maintain a sense of family. This particular evening, however, the atmosphere felt different. My Aunt Susan and Uncle Frank were unexpectedly present, along with my father's longtime attorney, Walter. Just a casual dinner, my mother insisted when I questioned the additional guests. But the leather portfolio sitting on the sideboard told a different story. This wasn't a family dinner, it was an ambush. After a tense meal where conversation remained superficial, my father cleared his throat and nodded to Walter, who produced the now familiar transfer documents. "We've prepared everything," my father announced. "Walter has explained the legal advantages to everyone here. All you need to do is sign." He slid the papers toward me, a silver pen placed precisely alongside them. The entire scene had been choreographed to pressure me into compliance. I looked around the table at the expectant faces, my mother's worried smile, my uncle's authoritative nod, Walter's professional detachment. Only Lily, absorbed in her dessert, remained oblivious to the tension. "No," I said simply, pushing the documents away. "I appreciate your concern, but this apartment is Lily's future security. Brian and I paid for it together, and I won't transfer it to anyone." My father's face remained composed, but a muscle twitched near his eye, a warning sign I recognized from childhood confrontations. "You're making a foolish decision based on sentimentality," he said softly, danger underlying his tone. "That property needs substantial renovations that you can't afford on a teacher's salary." "We're managing just fine," I countered. "The building is well maintained, and we have an emergency fund for repairs." "Cassandra has always been stubborn," my mother interjected with a nervous laugh. "Just like you, Richard." My father ignored her, leaning forward. "Think about Lily's education. Private school tuition. The public schools in our district are excellent," I interrupted. "That's why Brian and I chose that location specifically." "You're being unreasonable," my Uncle Frank added. "Your father is trying to help." "The conversation is over," I said firmly, standing and reaching for Lily's hand. "Thank you for dinner." My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Without another word, he strode from the dining room, the slamming of his study door echoing through the house. "Now you've done it," my mother sighed. "You know how he gets when he's contradicted." I gathered our things while my mother followed, wringing her hands. "Just consider his proposal, Cassandra. He only wants what's best." "What's best is respecting my decision as Lily's mother and as a widow managing her own affairs," I replied, helping Lily with her coat. As we drove home, Lily's small voice broke the silence. "Is Grandpa mad at us?" "Grandpa is disappointed that I made a different choice than he wanted," I explained carefully. "But adults sometimes disagree, and that's okay." The consequences of my refusal materialized quickly. The following Monday, I received a call from the director of Lily's after-school program. "I'm afraid there's been a problem with the payment," she explained uncomfortably. "The automatic withdrawals have been stopped." I was confused until she clarified. My father had apparently been paying for the program since Brian's death, something he'd never mentioned. Now, without warning, he'd canceled the arrangement, leaving me scrambling to cover the unexpected expense. Later that week, my principal called me into her office, expression grave. "We've received an anonymous concern about your emotional stability following your husband's passing," she said, clearly uncomfortable. Normally, I wouldn't give such reports any credence, but given your recent absences I cleared in advance for Lily's therapy appointments, I clarified, stunned by the underhanded attack. Thankfully, my principal was understanding once I explained the situation, but the attempt to undermine my professional standing was clear. Word traveled quickly in our community. Tutoring clients I'd counted on for supplementary income suddenly canceled. Invitations to family events stopped arriving. Only Brian's younger sister Amanda reached out, having heard rumors from mutual friends. "Your father's behavior is financial abuse," she stated bluntly during our coffee meeting. "And I'm concerned it could escalate. You should document everything and consult an attorney." Her support was unexpected but welcome. As Brian's only sibling, Amanda had always been kind but somewhat distant. Now, she offered not only emotional support but practical advice from her experience as a paralegal. The isolation tactics might have worked had they not strengthened my resolve. Each attempt to pressure me only confirmed I'd made the right decision in refusing my father's demands. What legitimate help comes with so many strings attached? Strange incidents began occurring at our apartment building. Men in official-looking uniforms appeared, claiming to conduct inspections, yet neighbors confirmed they hadn't received similar visits. Official-looking notices about code violations were slipped under our door, but when I called the city offices, they had no record of such complaints. Most disturbing were the late-night phone calls. Silence on the line when I answered, sometimes punctuated by the sound of breathing before disconnecting. I began documenting everything, following Amanda's advice, and installed additional locks on our doors. "Mom, why can't we visit Grandma anymore?" Lily asked one evening as I tucked her in. "We're taking a little break from those visits," I explained gently. "Sometimes families need space." "Is it because Grandpa wants our house?" she asked with the unnerving perception of children. I hesitated, balancing honesty with protection. "Grandpa has different ideas about what's best for us, but this is our home, and we're staying right here." Her small hand squeezed mine. "Daddy would be happy we're keeping it. He loved our apartment." "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered, throat tight with emotion. "He really did." The confrontation that changed everything happened on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. I'd arranged to work from home, grading papers at the kitchen table while waiting for Lily's school bus. The knock at the door was sharp, authoritative, my father's signature rap of knuckles. When I opened the door, he stood there with a woman I didn't recognize, both dressed in business attire. "Cassandra, this is Patricia Mills from Cornerstone Realty," he announced, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "She's going to do a quick appraisal of the apartment." "Excuse me?" I blocked Patricia's entry. "I didn't schedule any appraisal. It's just a formality," my father insisted. "For insurance purposes." "I have my own insurance," I countered. "And I didn't authorize this." My father sighed with exaggerated patience. "Don't be difficult, Cassandra. It will only take 30 minutes. Before I could respond, he guided Patricia past me. She looked uncomfortable but began removing a measuring tape from her briefcase. "This is trespassing," I stated firmly. "I'm asking you both to leave immediately." Patricia hesitated, glancing between us, but my father waved dismissively. "My daughter is still emotional after her husband's death. Proceed with the measurements, please." "Actually," Patricia said slowly, "if the homeowner hasn't authorized an appraisal, I'm acting on her behalf," my father insisted. "Family matters." I stood my ground. "I am the homeowner, and I'm not authorizing this appraisal." The standoff might have continued, but the sound of the front door opening announced Lily's return from school. She froze in the entryway, her backpack clutched to her chest as she took in the tense scene. "Grandpa?" she questioned, her voice small. "Why are you here with that lady?" My father's expression softened artificially as he addressed his granddaughter. "Just helping your mother with some grown-up business, princess." Patricia looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should reschedule when there's less confusion," she suggested, returning the measuring tape to her bag. "There's nothing to reschedule," I stated clearly. "I'm not selling the apartment, not now, not ever." Patricia nodded and made a quick exit, murmuring apologies. But my father remained, his facade of pleasantness vanishing the moment the door closed behind the realtor. "You're being completely irrational," he snapped, his voice rising. That woman was prepared to make an excellent offer. You could have been out of this cramped space by next month. This cramped space is our home, I countered, conscious of Lily witnessing the exchange. Lily, sweetheart, please go to your room for a few minutes while Grandpa and I talk. No, my father interrupted. Lily should hear this. She should understand how your stubbornness is affecting her future. He turned to my daughter. Don't you want a bigger bedroom, princess? A yard to play in? Lily looked at me uncertainly, then back to her grandfather. I like my room, she said quietly. Daddy painted stars on my ceiling. My father's expression darkened. Your father is gone, Lily. And your mother is living in the past instead of thinking about what's best for you. That's enough, I interjected. You need to leave.
Now.
Not until you see reason, he insisted, his voice rising further. I've tried to be patient, to guide you gently, but you're forcing my hand. I have investors waiting. He stopped abruptly, realizing his mistake. Investors? I repeated. So, this isn't about helping us at all. It's about your business problems. You don't understand the complexities. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. You want to sell our home to solve your financial issues. The answer is no. Please leave. His face flushed with anger. You ungrateful. He cut himself off, visibly struggling for control. After everything I've done for you, paying for that expensive after-school program, helping with groceries, help that came with conditions I never agreed to, I pointed out. Real help doesn't come with hidden agendas. Lily stepped forward then, her small face serious. This is our home, Grandpa. Mom said we're staying. My father's reaction happened so quickly, I had no time to intervene. He grabbed Lily by the shoulders, his fingers digging into her small frame. You listen to me, young lady, he hissed, his face inches from hers. Let go of her, I shouted, moving toward them. But instead of releasing her, his hands moved to her throat, squeezing visibly as Lily's eyes widened in shock and fear. Your mother is ruining everything, he snarled, seemingly unaware of the pressure he was applying. I lunged forward, grabbing his wrists and wrenching them away from my daughter's neck. Get away from her, I screamed, pushing him backward with strength I didn't know I possessed. He stumbled against the wall, momentarily stunned by my reaction. Lily ran to me, sobbing and gasping. Angry red marks were already forming on her delicate skin where his fingers had pressed. Get out, I ordered, my voice shaking with rage and fear. Get out now before I call the police. For a moment, he looked confused, as if coming out of a trance. His gaze fell to Lily's neck, to the visible evidence of what he'd done. Cassandra, I didn't mean to, he began. Get out, I screamed, reaching for my phone. You're never touching my daughter again. Something in my expression must have convinced him. Without another word, he turned and left, the door slamming behind him. The moment he was gone, I dropped to my knees, gathering Lily into my arms. Are you okay, baby? Can you breathe all right? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Grandpa hurt me, she whispered, her voice raspy. Why did Grandpa hurt me? I had no answer that made sense, even to myself. Instead, I called 911, reporting the assault while holding my trembling daughter. The responding officers were professional but hesitant when they heard Richard Gardner's name. Your father is a prominent businessman, one officer noted while taking photos of Lily's injuries. Are you sure you want to pursue this? He choked my 7-year-old daughter, I stated firmly. Take your pictures, file your report, and yes, I absolutely want to pursue this. At the hospital, a gentle doctor examined Lily's neck, confirming no permanent damage, but documenting the bruising for the police report. These marks are consistent with manual strangulation, she noted clinically. Your daughter was very lucky.
Lucky.
The word echoed in my mind as we returned home. Lucky that I was there to intervene. Lucky that he hadn't squeezed harder or longer. The thought of what might have happened left me sleepless, sitting beside Lily's bed all night, watching her breathe. By morning, my shock had hardened into resolve. This wasn't just about an apartment anymore. This was about protecting my daughter from a man who had revealed himself capable of unimaginable violence. Whatever came next, there would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness, no second chances. Some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. The legal battle began with a temporary restraining order, which the judge granted immediately based on the hospital documentation and police report. My father, however, didn't accept this consequence quietly. Within days, he had hired Martin Reynolds, the most expensive attorney in the county, known for aggressive tactics and high-profile wins. Mrs. Wilson appears to be suffering from paranoid tendencies following her husband's death, Reynolds stated to the local reporter who covered the initial hearing. Mr. Gardner was merely trying to restrain an overexcited child during a family disagreement. These unfortunate exaggerations are damaging a respected businessman's reputation. The character assassination extended beyond the courtroom. Rumors circulated that I was unstable after becoming a widow and inventing stories to gain sympathy. Most painful was the suggestion that Lily's injuries were either self-inflicted or exaggerated for effect. Children often scratch themselves during tantrums. My own mother commented when a mutual friend confronted her about the incident. Richard would never harm Lily. Cassandra is clearly not coping well with single parenthood. I might have been overwhelmed by these attacks had Amanda not connected me with Diane Sawyer, a family attorney who specialized in cases involving domestic violence. After hearing our story, Diane agreed to represent us pro bono. What your father did wasn't just assault, she explained during our first meeting. It was a calculated escalation when his financial manipulation failed. The pattern is textbook, and I've seen it before. We're going to document everything and build an airtight case. While the legal proceedings advanced, unexpected support emerged from my community. Lily's school principal, Martha Jenkins, called me into her office after noticing the fading bruises during morning drop-off. Lily told her counselor what happened. Martha explained, her expression grave. As mandatory reporters, we've filed our own documentation. But I also wanted you to know that the school stands behind you. Whatever schedule adjustments you need for court appearances or therapy appointments, consider them approved. My neighbors, whom I'd barely known beyond casual greetings, organized an informal watch rotation after Jasmine from apartment 3B reported a black sedan parked outside our building 3 nights in a row. The driver just sits there, watching your windows, she told me, concern evident in her voice. We've started taking photos and recording license plates, just in case. Perhaps most touching was the support from Brian's former colleagues at the design firm. They created an online fundraiser for our legal expenses, raising several $1,000s in just days. Brian was family to us, his former supervisor explained when delivering the check. And that means you and Lily are family too. Yet despite this outpouring of support, our financial situation grew increasingly precarious. My teaching hours were suddenly reduced due to budget constraints. Though no other teachers in my department experienced similar cuts. The timing, immediately after filing the restraining order, suggested my father's influence at work. Our utilities presented another mysterious crisis. The electric bill doubled, then tripled, despite no change in our usage patterns. When I called to question the charges, the customer service representative seemed confused by the account notes. There appears to be some kind of special assessment on your meter, she explained uncertainly. But I don't see any work orders explaining why. The breaking point came when I received an official-looking notice about a property tax reassessment, claiming our apartment's value had increased dramatically, resulting in a tax bill we couldn't possibly afford. It took 3 days of calls to various city departments to confirm the notice was fraudulent. But by then, I'd already lost sleep and peace of mind, exactly as intended. Meanwhile, Lily's condition deteriorated. The bright, curious child who loved school now cried each morning, begging to stay home. Nightmares disrupted her sleep, with her waking screaming about hands and can't breathe. She refused to answer the phone or door, and the mere suggestion of visiting my mother sent her into hysterics. I don't want to see Grandma, she sobbed. She'll bring Grandpa. Her pediatrician referred us to Dr. Freeman, a child psychologist specializing in trauma. After just 2 sessions, the diagnosis was clear: post-traumatic stress disorder. Children process trauma differently than adults, Dr. Freeman explained gently. The person who hurt her wasn't a stranger, but someone she trusted implicitly. That violation of trust compounds the physical trauma. Will she recover? I asked, my heart breaking for my daughter. With consistent therapy and a secure environment, yes, she assured me. But it's critical that she not be exposed to her grandfather again. Each contact would reset her progress. That professional opinion became central to our legal strategy, with Dr. Freeman agreeing to testify about Lily's condition at the permanent restraining order hearing. Her expert assessment would counter my father's narrative about an overreaction to a minor incident. As the hearing date approached, the pressure intensified. Anonymous complaints to Child Protective Services resulted in surprise home visits. My car's brake line mysteriously developed a leak. Mail disappeared from our box, including court notices that were later claimed delivered according to tracking. Each incident left me more exhausted but more determined. The apartment that had once simply represented financial security now symbolized something greater. Our freedom from control and manipulation, our right to safety and autonomy. I would defend it not just for its monetary value, but for what it represented: the life Brian and I had built together, the future he'd wanted for our daughter. "You look terrible," Amanda observed bluntly during one of our strategy sessions. "When was the last time you slept?" "I doze while Lily's at school," I admitted. "But at night, I'm too afraid to sleep deeply. What if he tries to get in? What if there's a fire?" She squeezed my hand. "You can't keep this up, Cassandra. You need to rest to be strong for what's coming." "What's coming?" I asked, exhaustion making me slow to comprehend. "The real fight," she replied grimly. "My brother died thinking you and Lily were secure. Dad is threatening that security, and he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants or faces consequences he can't charm or buy his way out of." She was right, of course. This was merely the beginning of a battle that would test every ounce of strength I possessed. But looking at the photo of Brian on our bookshelf, his kind eyes seeming to meet mine across the distance of death, I knew retreat wasn't an option. Some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The turning point arrived unexpectedly on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Lily was at her therapy session with Dr. Freeman, and I was using the hour to organize documentation for our upcoming court date. The knock at the door was soft, hesitant, nothing like my father's authoritative rap. Through the peephole, I could see a tall man in his 60s, wearing an expensive suit and looking nervously over his shoulder. I didn't recognize him immediately, but something about his bearing seemed familiar. "Who is it?" I called without opening the door. "Michael Donovan," he replied quietly. "Richard Gardner's business partner. I need to speak with you privately, Mrs. Wilson. It's important." Every instinct warned against opening the door, but curiosity won out. I slid the chain lock into place and opened the door the few inches it allowed. "What do you want?" "5 minutes of your time," he said, his expression grave. "What I have to tell you could change everything about your situation." Against my better judgment, I let him in, keeping my phone in hand with 911 pre-dialed, ready to press call if necessary. Michael declined to sit, instead pacing nervously near the door. "Richard doesn't know I'm here," he began without preamble. "If he did..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "I've been his partner for 22 years. I've overlooked a lot of questionable decisions, justified his harsh methods as necessary for business success. But what he did to your daughter crossed a line I can't ignore." "You know about that?" I asked, surprised. "Everyone in his inner circle knows," Michael confirmed. "He's calling it a misunderstanding, claiming the child exaggerated, but I've seen Richard's temper." "I believe you." He pulled a USB drive from his pocket and placed it on the table between us. "Gardner Enterprises is failing," he stated flatly. "Has been for at least 2 years. Richard's made increasingly risky investments, borrowed against assets that don't exist, and misrepresented our financial situation to investors." I stared at the drive. "Why are you telling me this?" Because your apartment isn't about family help or asset protection, Michael explained. It's about desperate need for liquid capital. We have investors threatening legal action if they don't receive promised returns by the end of the quarter. Richard needs cash to create the appearance of solvency. So my apartment would be sold immediately, he confirmed. He already has a buyer lined up, a developer looking to convert the entire building to luxury condos. Your $250,000 home would be flipped for nearly twice that amount within months. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, yet hearing it confirmed still sent a wave of nausea through me. Why are you really here, Mr. Donovan? Conscience? His expression tightened.
Partly.
And partly self-preservation. I've realized Richard will sacrifice anyone, family, partners, employees, to maintain the illusion of success. When it all collapses, and it will, I don't want to be the only one facing consequences. He gestured to the drive. That contains financial records, emails between Richard and various investors, and documentation of at least 3 instances where he's used family members' assets to secure loans without their knowledge. It also includes records of his calls to your school district and utility companies. He's been methodically trying to destabilize your finances to force you to sell. I picked up the small device that potentially contained our salvation. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, he admitted candidly. Verify everything independently. But Richard crossed an unforgivable line with your daughter, and I suspect he'll escalate further, if not stopped. I have grandchildren myself. After Michael left, I immediately called Amanda, who brought her laptop to examine the drive's contents. Together, we spent hours reviewing financial statements, email chains, and audio recordings of my father discussing strategies to pressure Cassandra into compliance. This is damning, Amanda whispered as we listened to my father calmly instructing someone to find a way to double the Wilson electricity bill, create a problem with the meter if necessary. The evidence proved crucial. At the permanent restraining order hearing the following week, our attorney presented not only the documentation of Lily's injuries, but the pattern of harassment and financial manipulation that preceded the physical assault.
Dr.
Freeman's testimony about Lily's PTSD carried particular weight with Judge Thompson, a grandmother herself. The child exhibits classic symptoms of trauma, she stated firmly. Nightmares, hypervigilance, regression in school performance, and specific fear responses to triggers associated with the assailant. My father's attorney attempted to paint me as an emotionally unstable widow inventing persecution stories, but the evidence from Michael's drive systematically dismantled this narrative. When presented with recordings of his own voice discussing plans to interfere with my employment, my father's face visibly paled. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, Judge Thompson announced, "This court grants the permanent restraining order prohibiting Richard Gardner from approaching or contacting Cassandra Wilson or Lily Wilson by any means, directly or through third parties, for a period of 3 years." The victory felt hollow until the district attorney approached me afterward. "We're filing criminal charges for child endangerment," she informed me quietly. "The evidence is too compelling to ignore, regardless of Mr. Gardner's standing in the community." My father's attorney approached soon after, suggesting settlement discussions to resolve this unfortunate family matter privately. I declined immediately. "This isn't a family matter anymore," I told him firmly. "It's about holding someone accountable for assaulting a child." The local newspaper, which had initially given minimal attention to the case, published a front-page article the following Sunday. "Prominent businessman faces assault charges. Alleged attack on granddaughter reveals pattern of abuse." The piece included quotes from former employees describing similar bullying and manipulation tactics in the workplace. The public exposure seemed to trigger a cascade effect. Business associates began distancing themselves from my father's company.
Client cancelé de contract.
The country club where he'd held membership for decades suddenly found irregularities with his account. Most surprising was the call from my mother one evening. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Not here. Somewhere neutral." We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes, where she arrived looking smaller somehow, diminished without my father's dominating presence beside her. "I should have protected Lily," she began, tears welling immediately. Should have protected you all these years. You knew? I asked, though the answer was already clear. She nodded, unable to meet my eyes. The controlling behavior, the rage when contradicted, I've experienced it since the early days of our marriage. Never physical violence toward me, but the threat was always there, in his eyes, in his voice. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. I told myself it was normal, that all strong men had tempers. I convinced myself your father's control was love, his anger was passion. And when he hurt Lily, I pressed, not ready to offer absolution. I couldn't face it, she admitted. Admitting what he did would mean admitting what I've enabled for 40 years. She finally looked up, her expression haunted. I've left him, Cassandra. I'm staying with my sister until I can find my own place. The final confrontation came at the courthouse for my father's arraignment on criminal charges. He looked physically changed, thinner, grayer, the confident posture replaced by a slight stoop. His eyes, however, still burned with the same intensity as he surveyed the crowded hallway. When he spotted Lily half hidden behind me, he took a step in our direction before his attorney caught his arm, whispering urgently. The momentary movement was enough to send Lily into a panic, her small body trembling violently as she pressed against my leg. It's okay, I soothed, kneeling to her level. He can't come near us. Remember what we practiced with Dr. Freeman? Deep breath in, count to 4, deep breath out. She followed the breathing exercise, her eyes never leaving my father until he disappeared into the courtroom. The fear in her reaction, nearly 2 months after the incident, spoke volumes about the trauma he'd inflicted. Inside the courtroom, I delivered my victim impact statement with a calm that surprised even me. Richard Gardner has presented himself as a caring grandfather concerned about his family's welfare, I stated clearly. His actions reveal a different truth. When financial manipulation failed, he resorted to physical violence against a 7-year-old child. No genuine love includes such calculating cruelty. I described the lasting effects on Lily, the nightmares, the fear, the therapy sessions, and the broader pattern of control that had characterized my father's role in my life. This case isn't about an apartment, I concluded. It's about a man who believes ownership extends to people, who sees family members as assets to be controlled rather than individuals to be respected. The apartment simply represents the limit of my willingness to be controlled, the boundary I finally established after a lifetime of compliance. The judge's rebuke was scathing. Mr. Gardner, your position in this community has clearly insulated you from consequences for far too long, she observed. This court finds the evidence of premeditated harassment and subsequent assault deeply disturbing. Your granddaughter deserved protection, not to become another victim of your need for control. As the proceedings concluded, I felt no triumph, only exhaustion and a quiet certainty that we had finally broken free from patterns established long before Lily was born. Whatever came next, we would face it on our own terms, in our own home, with boundaries firmly in place. The legal resolution came through a plea agreement that spared Lily the trauma of testifying. My father accepted reduced charges of child endangerment and harassment, receiving a sentence of 2 years probation, mandatory anger management counseling, and 200 hours of community service. The agreement included a formal written apology and financial restitution for Lily's ongoing therapy expenses. It's not the jail time some might have wanted, Diane explained when reviewing the terms, but it accomplishes our primary goals, establishing a legal record of what happened, ensuring continued protection through the restraining order, and avoiding putting Lily through a trial. The formal apology, when it arrived, was typed on my father's business letterhead but signed in his distinctive handwriting. The language was stilted, clearly crafted with legal guidance. I acknowledge the inappropriate nature of my actions and express sincere regret for any physical or emotional distress caused to Lily Wilson. I accept full responsibility for the incident in question and the preceding pattern of intrusive behavior. Whether the remorse was genuine remained questionable, but the document served its purpose as acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I filed it away, uncertain if Lily would ever want to read it, but preserving the option for her future understanding of what had occurred. My relationship with my mother evolved gradually over the following months. She maintained her separation from my father, renting a small apartment and beginning therapy to address the dynamics of their marriage. Our initial meetings were awkward, weighted with unspoken recriminations, but time and shared effort slowly rebuilt trust. I spent decades making excuses for his behavior, she admitted during one of our conversations, convincing myself that financial security compensated for emotional manipulation. I don't expect you to forgive that immediately, or maybe ever. But I'm trying to become someone who deserves a place in your lives. Her relationship with Lily required particular care. Dr. Freeman facilitated several joint sessions to address Lily's confusion and fear. Grandma didn't hurt me, Lily acknowledged during one session, but she didn't stop Grandpa either. You're right, my mother responded, tears streaming. I should have protected you, and I didn't.
I'm so sorry, Lily.
Gradually, they established a new relationship with clear boundaries. My mother never arrived unannounced, respected all our household rules, and made no attempts to discuss my father or defend his actions. Small outings to the park or library built a foundation of more positive memories. The gap left by my parents' absence was filled, somewhat unexpectedly, by Brian's family. His parents, though elderly and living several states away, made quarterly visits that became highlights of our calendar. Amanda relocated to a neighboring town for a new job opportunity, becoming a regular presence in our lives. Sunday dinners at her apartment became our new family tradition, with Amanda teaching Lily to cook Brian's favorite recipes. Your daddy loved my shepherd's pie, she would tell Lily as they worked together in the kitchen. He always said the secret was extra butter in the potatoes. These stories preserved Brian's presence in Lily's life, creating connections to her father that transcended his physical absence. We established rituals to honor his memory. Planting his favorite flowers on his birthday, volunteering at the animal shelter where we'd adopted our cat, watching the animated movies he'd loved on quiet weekend afternoons. Lily's healing progressed in small, measurable steps. The nightmares decreased in frequency. Her school performance gradually improved. The art therapy Dr. Freeman recommended produced increasingly colorful images, the dark scribbles of early sessions giving way to vibrant scenes of our apartment, her school, our little family unit of 2+ cat. Most encouraging was her developing ability to establish boundaries with adults. I don't want a hug right now, she might say to a well-meaning teacher or family friend. You can high-five me instead. Each assertion of her preferences was a victory, a reclaiming of agency after experiencing the ultimate violation of her physical boundaries. My own journey toward stability advanced on multiple fronts. When the reduced teaching hours at my original school became untenable, I applied for a full-time position at a different elementary school farther from my father's sphere of influence. The fresh start proved invigorating, with supportive colleagues and a principal who valued my experience with trauma-informed education. Financial security returned gradually. Without the constant manufactured crises engineered by my father, our modest budget stretched further. Amanda helped me establish a small freelance curriculum development business that supplemented my teaching income, allowing us to rebuild our emergency fund and even begin modest college savings for Lily. The apartment itself underwent transformation. What had been merely shelter became a canvas for reclaiming our space. We repainted walls in colors Brian would have loved. Lily's bedroom got the reading nook she'd always wanted, with bookshelves Brian's father helped build during one visit. The kitchen cabinets my father had criticized received new hardware that honored their vintage character while improving functionality. Each improvement, however small, represented our ownership of our home and our lives. The apartment's value, which my father had fixated on, became secondary to its importance as the container for our healing and growth. The security it provided was no longer merely financial, but deeply emotional. This was our sanctuary, the place where we set the rules and determined our own future. 1 year after the confrontation, we marked the anniversary not with sadness, but with celebration of our resilience. Amanda and several close friends gathered in our freshly painted living room, sharing a meal and memories of how far we'd come. To boundaries, Amanda toasted, raising her glass, and to the courage to defend them. Later that week, an unexpected letter arrived, not from my father's attorney, but in his personal handwriting. Unlike the formal apology, this note seemed genuinely reflective. The mandatory counseling I resented has forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about my behavior. I do not expect forgiveness, but I am working to understand the damage I've caused. The business empire I prioritized above all else has largely collapsed, perhaps rightfully so. If you ever feel Lily would benefit from knowing her grandfather's changed, I would welcome the opportunity to demonstrate that change under whatever conditions you deem appropriate. I placed the letter in the same file as the formal apology, making no immediate decision. Genuine transformation was possible, but only time would reveal its authenticity. Our boundaries would remain firm, with any potential future contact guided by Lily's needs and wishes rather than adult expectations of reconciliation. The apartment remains our home today. Sometimes I catch Lily running her hand along the kitchen counter Brian refinished, or studying the constellations he painted on her ceiling, and I know we made the right choice in fighting to keep this space. It holds not just our possessions but our memories, our history, our connection to the man we both loved. The true value of our home was never about the dollar figure my father fixated on. It was about the security Brian wanted to provide for us, the future he envisioned even when he couldn't be part of it. In defending that legacy, I discovered strengths I never knew I possessed and taught Lily the most important lesson. True family is defined not by blood or obligation, but by love, respect, and the courage to protect what matters most. If my story resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that standing firm against manipulation is possible, even when it comes from family. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding strength in unexpected places. Remember, protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's necessary for healing and growth. Thank you for listening to my journey.